We have been hearing all about how rich and powerful China is and how easily it can cripple other economies simply by stopping trading with them. But this is not how things went down between China and Australia. Not long ago, no country in the free world seemed more reliant on Chinese buyers than Australia. The land down under had been exporting more to China than its next 9 trading partners combined. This is why when Beijing launched a trade war against the country last year, everybody thought Australia would be brought to its knees pronto. But the Aussies shocked the world with more than 20% surge in exports to China in December 2020. What did the Aussies do to defy such a strong bully? Does Australia have a secret plan that other countries may follow? I'm Sharon, and this is Straight Talk. Roughly 1/3 of Australia's exports go to China, from iron ore and lobster to barley. 20% of what Australia buys from China can't be bought from anywhere else. So how did the trade war start in the first place? Well, things were cozy, at least on the surface, between the two countries, until the coronavirus struck. The pandemic made Australia take a long, hard look at the Chinese Communist Party. In April 2020, Australia's Prime Minister Scott Morrison called for an international inquiry into how the COVID-19 virus started in Wuhan and its subsequent handling. And I'm sure you will not be surprised to hear that it didn't take long for China to retaliate by firing warning shots across Australia's bow. A few days after Morrison's remarks, Beijing suspended beef imports from Australia's largest meat processors. A few more days later, the Chinese government slapped a massive 80% tariff on Australian barley imports, accusing suppliers of selling below cost. The Chinese authorities didn't bother to show how they arrived at that judgment. This sudden decision forced Australian farmers to pause their sowing mid-season. Around the same time, China issued new rules targeting the Australian iron ore industry. All those measures took place within days of each other. These were classic moves straight out of the CCP playbook, and they were just the beginning. A couple of months later in August, upset by Australia's stance on Hong Kong, China took it out on Aussie wine, but this time with a more creative spin. China's Commerce Ministry invented something called an anti-dumping security deposit and imposed it on Aussie wine sellers with a rate up to 200%. In October, timber exports were blocked because Beijing said they detected a pest in a shipment. In November, more than 20 tons of live lobsters from Australia were left to rot on the tarmac at the Shanghai airport. The clearance was delayed because Chinese customs suddenly felt the need to check those live lobsters for minerals. You may be wondering by now, why didn't Beijing just ban Australian imports and save themselves the hassle of coming up with one feeble lie after another? Well, China is a member of the World Trade Organization and is supposed to follow its rules. If the Chinese government wanted to officially ban Australian imports, it would have to present the reasons and evidence supporting its actions. Otherwise, it would be in breach of the rules and have to face the consequences. The Chinese regime knew there were no reasonable grounds for sanctioning Australia, so they made up some technical excuses to escape any disciplinary action and hit the opponent with obscure measures. So as you can see, things seemed pretty grim for Australia at this point. How did Australia manage to sell even more to China than before? We're talking about over 20% increase here, 1 month after most of these unofficial bans went into effect. Well, the one thing many countries trading with China often do not realize is that China is vulnerable and needs them as much as they need China, if not more. China relies on imports for many agricultural products and natural resources. You may also find it hard to believe that China has to buy seeds from overseas for many of the vegetables they grow. In trying to punish other countries, China often suffers a great deal more. Take iron ore, for example. Beijing relies heavily on Australia for this mineral, which is essential for steel making. Steel is crucial to China in its economic activities. No strong rhetoric can make this weakness go away. They must buy premium iron ore from Australia, the world's dominant supplier. So not only they continue to buy, they also quietly bought 21% more of it from Australia. The 80% tariff on grains didn't really dent Australia either. They sold double the amount of barley and more than quadruple the amount of wheat after finding new buyers in Thailand, Vietnam, and Saudi Arabia. Based on a study on the barley ban, for every dollar Australian barley exporters was projected to lose, China was expected to lose $10. That is because it is difficult to find an alternative that is better in quality and value. The Chinese government's decision hurt its own businesses and consumers. As is often the case, the CCP shot themselves in the foot. The ban of Aussie coal also shows how crazy and weak the CCP is. China is not capable of producing quality thermal coal needed to generate electricity. In attacking Australia, China has inflicted even greater harm on its own economy and citizens. As a result of the ban, many cities along the coastline have seen power outages. Even office towers and shopping malls in first-tier cities like Shanghai went dark. Companies released employees early in the afternoon and asked them to work from home. People were even reduced to having to rely on their flashlights to read in libraries. At the same time, due to lack of supply and extreme cold weather, China had to turn to other countries and pay a lot more than they would for coal. Indeed, it was a huge price for the Chinese to pay trying to punish Australia for speaking out. So why did Beijing still go ahead with the ban? Because it was being arrogant and reckless, just like how a dictatorship would behave. These events also revealed one important fact. In trying to bully other countries, the CCP inevitably leaves itself wide open to be injured. China's economy is extremely unbalanced and a lot more vulnerable than people think. It is not as powerful or as fearful as the media has portrayed it to be. This is something I hope to cover more in depth in my future videos. China experts are all too familiar with the game Beijing frequently plays. Borrowing a Chinese term, it's called killing a chicken to scare the monkeys. They pick an easy target, defeat it, so they can teach others a lesson. Former British Foreign Secretary Malcolm Rifkind made some very wise remarks. In the real world, when you have such a situation, your potential victims join up to ensure a collective and coordinated response. Yes, what if all the monkeys joined together, especially when that chicken has defied so valiantly and brilliantly? I know some people in the UK have feared China's economic power. There was an opinion piece in Sunday Times a little over a year ago. Kowtowing to China could pay dividends for British companies. Written before COVID-19 dominated our lives and before what happened recently to the people of Hong Kong, to Tibetans, and to Uyghur Muslims. I wonder if the author still thinks the same way today. There is no doubt that getting the CCP to behave is no easy task. And true, China's trade war with Australia is not over yet. But going back is not a choice, and there is a way out if nations with shared values and interests stay together. On the trade war with China, Australia's Agriculture Minister David Littleproud said the Australian government will never compromise our values and principles or our sovereignty.
With other matters that they've raised, particularly around our sovereignty, which we will not relent on.
Safe to say, we're more than a little proud of him. This is it for today. I'd love to hear your comments and please share them down below. If you have enjoyed today's video, please like it, share it, and don't forget to subscribe and hit the bell to get notified of future episodes. Thank you for watching and see you next time.